Hello, my name's Paul Davies and I'm a behavioural psychologist, and I want to spend about 5 minutes talking to you about behaviour change and why it's a really good lens to view both creativity and innovation projects. So why is behaviour and behaviour change in particular a good way to think about your innovation project? Well, when you actually break it down, every project, every service, every product is trying to change behaviour in some way, whether it be as simple as getting somebody to buy the thing that you're creating, or actually some more long-term behaviour change. And be able to define that behaviour that you're trying to change at the outset of a project can really help you define what happens later on and make sure that your project and your idea is actually going to be productive and effective when it actually reaches your customers. The way that our behaviour, the way that we make decisions, can boil down to some very simple psychological structures, and that can be anti-intuitive. With behavioural psychology, you look at changing people's behaviour without needing to change attitudes. Now, when you think about it, often we go forward with a project trying to change people's attitudes and the way that they think. Now, this actually is very, very difficult to do. What's much easier is to change behaviour. But our reaction tends to be that attitude change is a precursor to behaviour change. As in, if we give information to people, they will think about it, they will take it in, they may change their mind, and by their changing their mind, they will then lead to change in their behaviour. Now, research from behavioural psychology has shown that this simply isn't the case. Behaviour can change without needing to change attitudes. One model I find really helpful when thinking about innovation is something called the Fogg's behavioural model. Now, this came out of Stanford University with Professor B.J. Fogg, and it's a very simple model of which you can just run your project and your thinking through. And the model, it says that the behaviour, which you should have defined already, can come when three things are present. And those three things are a trigger, ability, and motivation. All three things need to be present in order for a behaviour to happen. Now, just to break that down, a trigger is something which just lets the customer or the person know there is a behaviour, there is something to do, the behaviour you want to change. Ability is how easy or hard it is to actually enact that behaviour, and the motivation is how much that person wants to do the behaviour or doesn't want to do the behaviour. Now, Fogg's put all that together in a nice model which you can see on the graph. Now, what the graph shows is that motivation and ability are on each axis. Ability being, is it easy for them to perform the behaviour or hard? And the motivation being, do they want to do that or do they not want to do that? Now, if a trigger appears anywhere above the line that you can see, it is likely to make that behaviour happen. Anywhere below that line, the behaviour is unlikely to actually occur. Now, to put that in an everyday sense, I want you to think of a time that happened to you where your phone rang, your mobile phone, and you didn't answer it. Now, some of you would come up with reasons such as, I was driving the car, I was in the shower, I was doing the lawn. In other words, you were doing something which made the ability for you to actually answer the phone difficult, and so it didn't lead to the behaviour. Others may say, well, actually, I looked at the phone, I saw who was ringing, and I didn't want to answer it. Could be my mum, my dad, PPI, an unrecognised number. So your motivation was low, even though you could quite easily pick it up and answer it. You didn't, therefore the behaviour didn't happen. Lastly, if you took your phone out of your pocket and saw that you have a missed call, then the trigger wasn't there because it could have been on silent, you didn't know your phone was ringing in the first place. Even though your motivation might have been high to answer it and your ability was certainly there, you still didn't perform the behaviour. All three of those elements need to be together for that behaviour to happen. Now, remember I said that attitude change does not need to happen for behaviour change to happen. Well, Fogg actually emphasises this in his model, because between motivation and ability, he says, really you should be focusing on ability. Because it's far easier to change the way that somebody can enact that behaviour and make it easier for them then try and change the way they think about that behaviour. But I've seen so many projects, and it is almost a natural human intuition to actually focus in on motivation. How do we motivate somebody to do this? But just take a step back. Say, how do we actually make it easier for people to do what we want them to do? And when it comes to motivation, actually think about, are we trying to get people to do something that they've never done before, or even that they don't want to do and we're trying to really change them? Or are we just trying to amplify a behaviour that they already do? Because if you are trying to amplify an existing behaviour, you're going to have far more success. And there are major projects out there that through digital technology especially are just making it easier for people to do what they wanted to do anyway, and possibly even were doing. And there's a great phrase that came out of a BJ Fogg's class, and it's place hot triggers into the path of motivated people. Now, a hot trigger is one that you can do immediately. So an email with a button that you can simply click, and then you've enacted a behaviour, or you're moving towards the behaviour. It's a hot trigger. Whereas a billboard you might see whilst driving past, because you can't do what that billboard's asking you to do at that time, it's a cold trigger. So just think about the triggers that you're putting into the projects, and are they hot and are they cold? Are you going to put them into the path of somebody who's motivated to amplify a behaviour that they already are doing? I would say, first of all, define what behaviour your idea is attempting to influence. Then, have you enough triggers? Are they hot triggers or are they cold triggers? And have you done everything to enhance people's ability to actually perform the behaviour that you've identified? And are these people motivated to do that? Do they do that already? Or are you trying to introduce a new behaviour to them? Finally, all of this does sort of lean towards health projects, which I've mentioned, finance projects as well. It's such a good lens, though, to look at every project through. Now, as an example, going back to BJ Fogg again, one of the projects that came out of his classroom was one of the students looked at, could I help people share their photographs with each other? It's a behaviour which people were trying to do anyway. Digital technology could possibly enhance that and make it easier to do. So how did he go about doing that? Well, that student's name was Mike Krieger, and he went on to found Instagram. And so this technique, this way of looking at an innovation project, can be incredibly powerful to help people start a behaviour and keep it going. So I hope that helps.